Thanks for tuning in this week to Buckle Up, an ultra running conversation. And we have some big news. Welcome, Mandy Mullen.
Thank you, Brian, and listeners. Thanks for having me. I am so excited to be here talking about things I love the most, running.
I should have done my homework, Bendy, but I can't remember what episode you were on, but it was one of our previous recordings. And we talked a lot about Run Windsor race series and the other things that you're doing in the Northern Colorado community.
We did. Yeah, we talked about that, a little bit of my ultra running, my passion for the sport, which I think is kind of why I'm here.
Hey, why are you wearing all those sunglasses?
So one time I was going up Hope Pass last year running the Leadville 100 and I lost my sunglasses. And then I believe I had to steal your sunglasses at the top of Hope. It was panicked that I wasn't going to be able to protect myself from the sun. So now I just routinely go around with two pairs of sunglasses because you never know when they're just going to fall off.
Stealing might not be the right term. I freely turned them over to you because I was anticipating a DNF, which then I turned around and finished. But yes, you still have my giant bro Amazon glasses that I use for cycling most of the time. But they worked really well that day.
I do. So they worked well that day for you. They weren't my good luck charm because, long story short, come to find out, you ended up finishing the race, even though when I saw you, you were relaxed on the ground, convinced you were done. I was convinced I was going to crush year 3, and I actually pulled out coming back into Twin and went and took a great long nap in the middle of the night and saw you at the finish line, and I was surprised to see you there. So those sunglasses have a fun story, but they didn't get me to my belt buckle that day.
They didn't, unfortunately. Mandy, welcome to the show. Thank you for jumping in short notice. I'm super excited to share a ton of ultra running conversations with you, one of which the audience is about to hear pretty quickly here. But I do want to touch bases about, you have the prop of the sunglasses, but I do want to touch bases if you're watching on the YouTube channel. I have a giant orange cone behind me in my setup studio here. And there is this like mythical legend in the Run Windsor community of these cones and what they're doing and their need to be rescued. And can you elaborate on this cone and why we're all talking about orange cones?
I'm obsessed with orange cones. So if you have a funny story or you see orange cones somewhere and they're abandoned, they're doing a great job, they're doing a bad job, feel free to tag at Run Windsor CO or me, Mullen Mama Runner. My cone story, I'll give you the very quick version, is that when I started the Run Windsor race series back in 2018, I think was our first race, I had no cones. Come to find out, cones are really hard to find in an expensive way. And as a new race director, the budget was approximately zero to, hire a barricade company to rent 100, 200 cones for a 5K. And couldn't really get them after year 1 of race directing from municipality. So cones became like the thing. Like anytime I saw a cone, I was like, gosh, I just wish I could take that cone home and adopt it. It just kind of became part of our story that we were always looking for cones. And we didn't go out and steal cones. Don't worry. We were stealing them, but it just became something we wanted. And eventually I got a cone sponsor. So I'm a proud owner I'm a mom to 300 cones that all have the Run Windsor sticker on them. They are well taken care of in my shop. But I still love looking out for other cones out on the street doing hard work.
So if you go to Mandy's Instagram page or even the Run Windsor Instagram page, you may see quite a few pictures of cones in distress or that are in need of some love and attention.
Thank you for sharing the love of cones, Brian, and I'm excited to see where this adoption story goes here. And where did you get that cone, by the way?
Well, that story's for another time. But anyway, I might have a few more cones in my garage as well. So maybe periodically they'll just show up in my background.
Sometimes they're just looking for a new home. And, you just have to open your door to the homeless cones out there.
I'm super excited for you to be on the show. I think you bring just a ton of energy to all things that you do. But in addition to that, you brought a ton of energy to this particular show today because she's a friend of yours.
Yeah, I'm lucky to know Amy. I don't know her very well, but our paths have crossed a couple of different times. And what I've come to realize recently with her is we share a lot in common. So I loved this conversation, getting to talk to another female in the endurance world in a little bit of a different space than me, but for sure just a mom, an entrepreneur, an athlete. She takes her physical wellness and overall wellness and health and a holistic view, really seriously and has built something from scratch. So we have a lot in common. We've done a lot of similar events. And yeah, I was really excited to be able to have that conversation with her. And something we touch on in the conversation is the commonalities between ultra runners and entrepreneurs, business owners. There's a lot more in common than I think people realize.
That's right. Today's guest is Amy Tucker from Salty Britches chafing ointment. She built this product out of a need for her own child to participate in saltwater activities. They have a love of the beach in South Carolina on Foley Beach, which I didn't actually mention in the episode, but Foley Beach, which is just outside of Charleston, where I was stationed in North Carolina as a Marine, and I had a girlfriend in Charleston. So I spent a lot of time on Foley Beach. I have drinking lots of yards of beer on Foley Beach, and I played a lot of beach volleyball on Foley Beach. I didn't mention it in the show, but all great memories of Foley Beach. Amy creates this product for a need for a child on Foley Beach. She does all the research, builds a brand right on the beach with her friends and family, and it all came from a need to get a kid to participate in water sports.
Yeah, it was really fun to hear Amy transition into where she is now and all the different spaces and different people that she's helping through her product. She's been a strong cookie through all of it, it sounds like.
Yeah, if you've been to any of the major races, you'll probably have seen the Salty Britches tent and or Amy out there handing out little product samples and all those things. I'm looking forward to meeting her in person at Leadville, and I think you just met her at Leadville or reconnected with her at Leadville just previously, the same time just before you took my sunglasses.
Yeah, I met her right before the sunglasses. I saw her after. So this is all very full circle for us. It felt like a great episode to get started with me being on the podcast.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I'm so excited to record new episodes with you and share in the ultra running community. And without further ado, let's roll that episode with Amy. So enjoy, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks so much, Amy, for taking some time out of your day to talk to us. We appreciate you stopping in and checking in on us. And I'm glad you got your internet fixed so you didn't have to reschedule this call.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's the joys of being in the middle of nowhere, which we love.
Where is the middle of nowhere, Amy?
We really are in the middle of nowhere. We're in the upstate of South Carolina, directly across the Georgia border. So we're about an hour south of Clemson University. Everyone thinks we're a coastal company. I wish we were, but nope. We're actually as far inland as you can go in the great state of South Carolina.
How far is the beach?
4 hours.
That's pretty far. Okay.
Yeah. It's
so Amy, are these the beaches 4 hours away where the Salty Britches kind of came to life, or were you somewhere like exotic, like Thailand?
Oh, no. We were on the beach in Charleston, South Carolina. Folly Beach is what we like to call our home beach. The surf shop at Folly Beach, McKevlin's, is one of the oldest on the East Coast. They were the first surf shop to carry our product. So we have a lot of love for Folly Beach. But yeah, that's where we've spent our summers, especially as our kids grew up. That's where we developed the product, named the product. I sat on the beach and applied for a trademark for the product and opened the new business account on the beach. Everything happened right there in Folly Beach.
That's awesome.
Amy, let's back up a second. Let's talk about Salty Britches and the origins of it. You kind of just gave us a brief overview of it, but let's back all the way up to the beginning. How did you even come about becoming the CEO of a lubricant company?
I know, right? That's what dreams are made of. I just didn't know it. This was a second chapter in life for me, even. Like, I never anticipated this would even be a thing, nor did I set out to make this a thing. But our son, when he was a young kid, he could not enjoy the ocean. He had sensitive skin. He had some eczema. And the saltwater just tore his skin apart, more so than other kids. A lot of kids suffered from it, but he really suffered from it. And if he'd hang on to a boogie board, his arms and chest and belly would break out really bad. And we would make our way to the surf shops and ask, what is the solution to this? And every time, we know it's terrible. It's such a problem. We hear about it all the time. Try diaper cream, Aquaphor, all the standard things that you would think to use, which we had already been around that road. We had tried all the things. We had tried fabrics, bathing suits, expensive bathing suits, basketball shorts, shirts, everything you can think of, different sunblocks. We had tried Desitin, all the things. Nothing held up in the ocean, or it was very sticky, or it would transfer to a board, or sand would stick to it. There were all these challenges. And as a 6-year-old, he told me exactly what he wanted. He needed something that was clear, something that sand would not stick to, something that worked, something that lasted, that he didn't know was there and that no one else knew was there. The Desitin, because he'd get it under his arms and his belly, everybody would see white diaper cream all over him. And that's just very uncool. Not to mention it just didn't hold up in salt water. So that was kind of my marching orders as a desperate mom to fix this just for him. After a really bad vacation where he really suffered and did not want to get back in the water, which in turn made the whole vacation suffer, I took to my kitchen. I'd done some research on different raw materials, what open ocean water swimmers would use. You could see them with a white haze all over their body. That is lanolin. So I knew I wanted to start with lanolin. Lanolin mimics the lipids in human skin more than anything else in nature. And like attracts like, lanolin is waterproof. So I started with a base of lanolin, which he tolerated beautifully. And we tweaked this formula for over 4 years with no anticipation of making this a product. It was just to serve his need at the beach. Well, we would vacation with other families, and other moms got word that I had this concoction. We called it Amy's Goo forever. And we would pass the little Tupperware container around to all the families before we'd go out on the beach. And they'd wipe it out every year, and I'd just make a new batch. And sitting on the beach in 2017, one of the moms said, you need to post on Facebook that you have a solution to this. And I thought she was crazy. First of all, I did not have a great relationship with social media. I had a very small Facebook account. I did not have Instagram. I didn't have anything else. And was very comfortable in my career and life. And she's, said the magic words, this could help a lot of people. This could help a lot of families. And I thought, she's right. So I posted in 2017, hey, moms, if your kids suffer from saltwater chafing, I think I have a solution. And I had over 700 comments, instant messages, direct messages. My phone just started going crazy. And I thought, holy cow, there's a real need out there. Well, if I'm going to make this for all these people, I need to do it the right way. I need to set up an LLC so that I can write off all the raw material cost, because my raw materials were expensive. I was using medical grade everything. So I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to set up an account, I'm going to have a business name so that I can, this is how I was thinking on the beach that day. All right, I want to make this, but there's so many people I need to make it for. How am I going to do it the right way? And I can't just give it away to everybody. I'll go broke doing that because the raw materials were expensive. So I called my bank while I was sitting on the beach and said, I think I need to open a new account so that I can order raw materials and accept some payment. And they're like, well, do you have a business name? I'm like, no. Do you have an LLC? No. Yeah. So I went to LegalZoom.com on the beach, and I read everything I had to read. I applied for my LLC, named it after our family, the initials in our family. And then as that same day, we were sitting in a circle, all the parents, and it had dawned on us that the kids had been playing in the water for 6 hours, and no tears, no one complaining. And we came up with the name Salty Britches right there on the beach that day. And I don't even remember exactly how it went, but I knew I wanted the name Britches because it's a Southern term. It's a fun name. And I believe it was my son that said salty. And immediately when we heard Salty Britches, we knew that was it. That was the name. So right there on the beach, we applied for our trademark for the name, opened the business account once I got the LLC. I was able to do all of that electronically so that when I got home from that beach trip, I ordered raw materials through that account and started blending and filling little jars, and it never stopped. That's where the business started. We started putting this on a cooler in our front porch for locals to come by. I'd come home from work, and every day my cooler would be full of $10 bills and all the little jars would be gone. I know my neighbors thought we were crazy, had no idea what was happening. I have a distinct memory of early in the morning pulling my trash can to the end of the road, end of my driveway, and we were in a neighborhood, and I had my house coat on, and this car flies by and stops and puts it in reverse and comes back to the end of my driveway. He said, hey, are you the lady that makes that Salty Britches? And I said, yeah, that's me. He said, I'm the pharmacist at Wingard Pharmacy. I'm going to sell it in my pharmacy.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I'm clutching my house coat. I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, can we talk about this later? He's like, no big deal. Just bring it by and I'll sell it at the pharmacy. And what was happening is everyone was seeing this unfold on Facebook and all the chatter and all the talk. And So I had several stores that called us that were local. And that's where we got our start in retail, was just from seeing the activity on Facebook. And now we're in almost 600 retail locations, growing all the time. Our business has turned into what I thought was a coastal brand, still is, and is still available in a lot of surf shops and coastal shops, but also the endurance community that really exploded for us, the ultra running, the triathlon, hiking, backcountry hunting, all of that developed. And then the military side of it developed. So all of that happened just because I was a desperate mama that wanted to find a solution for my kid. And that's really the story. That is the origin story of how we got here.
That's so
quite
great.
the story.
Amy, I think Mandy and I are pretty resourceful adults. We have kids ourselves and we're willing to help our children out. But do you have a background in this? Like, I don't know if I would like start mixing stuff on a pod on my stove and start applying it to my kids. Like, so like, is there a background to this? Like, do you have some previous experience in that?
Well, I'd like to say I'm a professional problem solver, but I have a degree in chemistry. So I have some knowledge of, what raw materials would mix well with what, and able to do that kind of research for the properties of the raw materials that I was looking for and trying to meet the certain needs that I was looking for. So that I'm sure that helped. But, I really don't give that all the credit. It's just a degree in chemistry means you learn how to problem solve for sure. And then I had an extensive career in process improvement, working for a company. And then I was in pharmaceutical sales for 17 years. So I knew how that process worked and how to develop relationships. And all of that really contributed to the success of starting a business in my 40s. But yeah, it really was a desperation to help him and then do the research and put in the work to kind of figure out, okay, I don't want sand to stick to it. So what do I do about that? I want it to have a really high melting point. I don't want this to melt off the skin. Those were the different things I was trying to figure out, which is why I tweaked the formula for 4 years. So it was a very long process. A lot of people may look at this and think, oh, we just got lucky and it kind of happened. But it was a very long process.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Amy, the ingredients in the product. I use it myself and love it. And I was sharing with Brian, and then I shared on my social media that it's become like the magical Windex in my house when anyone has anything on their skin, like sunburn, chapped lips, irritation, something itches, there's a weird rash. I walk around, I'm like, here, put some salty britches on it. So it really is well-rounded. I'm curious, if you could count like how many different iterations of the product you've gone through, both from like an application process and the ingredients. Could you put a number on that? Like how many times did you go back to the drawing board?
No less than 300. And I'll have to send you guys the picture. I kept a big Tupperware container of all of my iterations, all of my versions. And those were just my versions. And then I found a cosmetic chemist, a real life cosmetic chemist, because I had trouble with stability for the product. I didn't want it to melt. I wanted it to have a really good shelf life. And a really cool story about that, I discovered her. She's very much a part of our story, still a very good friend of mine to this day. She's in Iowa. So I decided, if I'm going to do this and meet this person, I'm going to go face to face. And I took my son with me, and he was maybe 8 or 9 at the time. And we flew to Iowa, and I took him to her lab. And she told me on the phone, no one comes here. Like, we can do all of this electronically. I'm like, no, I need to know, is this a dog or am I barking up the right tree? I really want to sit down and meet with you and talk about these things, which we did. And it was the beginning of a fabulous friendship and relationship for professionally. And she made a minor tweak to my formula for stability purposes. Because you have to meet certain specs and qualifications, even for cosmetic products. We don't have an FDA label. We don't have a drug OTC. We don't need one. So I just had to make sure I met all the correct parameters for labeling. And because I was no expert in that, but she was. So that really helped. And then she made a minor tweak, and her minor tweak ended up giving us a 5-year shelf life, which is fantastic. And you have to have a 5-year shelf life to be able to be in any kind of kits for the military or any kind of first aid kits, IFACs. You need a 5-year shelf life. And that worked out beautifully because that was not something we had seen coming down the road, but it was something that we did early on in that stability work. So, that was kind of how it happened.
Yeah, and I kind of had a question about, true entrepreneur story, Brian and I are both small business owners ourselves. And I love hearing stories where you met a need, but then you look back down the road years later and you're nowhere where you thought you were going to be.
Yeah.
So starting out on the beach, like when I first heard of Salty Britches, I hear Salty Britches and I'm an ultra runner. So we think our britches get salty when we run, and it's really uncomfortable. So I want to know, like, when in this process and how did you enter into the endurance space with runners?
Oh yeah, I love the answer to this question. So this is kind of a wild story because I did not know ultra running was a thing. I had no idea people ran 100 miles. Now they're running 300 miles. I mean, running across the country. Like, I just did not know. And I am a recreational runner. I'm a 5-miler, but I was not into ultra running at all. It was just not very popular where I live. It has since become popular. But this backs up a little bit. I was a big fan of Sarah Blakely that created Spanx. And I had listened to her podcast on how I built this with Guy Raz, her origin story. And I can remember driving around in my car, listening to those podcasts and listening to her and following her and all things Sarah Blakely. And I had this rule that I traveled a lot for work, that I would buy a hardback book on every trip for every airplane. I would read a book. And that was like my goal. I still do that to this day. And I remember buying the book Living with a Seal by Jesse Itzler. And I read that book. That's a really quick, easy read. I highly recommend it if no one's read this book. It's a great, great book. And it's about David Goggins living with Jesse Itzler for 30 days and training him. And I realized reading the book, oh my gosh, this guy Jesse Itzler is married to Sarah Blakely. And I did not realize that connection until I read the book. So I started following Jesse on social media. Then I discovered that Jesse has found this Navy SEAL guy that's running 100 miles, Chad Wright, and he has contacted Chad Wright to bring him into his life to help train him how to run 100 miles. He and I think it was Mark Brown. Yeah. So Chad gets involved with Jesse and Mark and tries to teach them how to run 100 miles, which he successfully does. So then I start following Chad Wright, who at the time might have had 1,000 followers max. He was tiny. He was unknown. So I reached out to Chad on direct messenger on social media, Instagram, and said, hey, I've got this new product that withstands saltwater chafing. You're running 100 miles. I think you could use this. If you're running that far and you live in Georgia, surely, would you be willing to test it out and see what you think about it? And he said, absolutely, send it to me. So I shipped it to Chad Wright. Chad called me. I will never forget. I was in the parking lot of a grocery store. He called me. He's like, Miss Amy, this stuff's amazing. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'm saying this was my very first iteration, my very first tube. Since we've changed. So I developed a relationship with Chad and got to know him, been to, done things with he and Brooke, his wife's many things. We are always at their races, but we got to know and love that community, the 3 of 7 community. Chad has built his own right. And then, of course, we got hooked in with Jesse doing 29029 Everesting, doing a lot of his Hell on the Hill races. And he pulled Salty Britches into the fold for all of those events, which was just incredible for us. The exposure was incredible. And that's kind of how we got into that space. Chad really single-handedly put us on the map for ultra running. So then he introduced us to several race directors, the race director for Cruel Jewel, the race director for Georgia Jewel, which we still support those races. Mid-State Mile in Tennessee, we got involved in that, which was an incredible race, still an incredible race. So yeah, that was how we discovered that community. And then COVID hit. And ultra running, I'm not exactly sure of the statistics, but I think it skyrocketed when COVID hit. And one of the only races that were still going forward was Mid-State Mile. They did not cancel their race. Kudos to them for not doing that. So that was really what happened during that time, is ultra running blew up and we kind of just rode that wave with it. So that's how we got into that community.
That's such a full circle story. I don't think I knew all of that, but that's exactly really how we ended up meeting each other, and then how you ended up meeting Brian. But I met Jesse Itzler climbing the Manitou Incline in 2018. I was coaching a group of women to go run the Wild West Relay, which I now own. I was climbing with him and a bunch of Mark Brown and a bunch of wild guys. We get to the top and we're talking, where are you from? Why are you from there? And he says what he does. And we're like, still don't know what you do. And he tells us about how he's inventing this race and we should come and run his race. And we're like, yeah, we love running races. We'll look it up. And so we get to the bottom of the mountain. Oh, and he also tells us he's married. His wife owns Spanx. And one of my girlfriends says, you're married to Sarah Blakely? And he's like, yeah. Y'all know Sarah? And she said, I don't know Sarah. Oprah knows Sarah, I think, but like I know who she is.
Yeah.
And we got back down to the trailhead at the bottom of the incline, and we look him up because we're going to register for this race. Well, we find it, and it's like $3,000, and we're a bunch of stay-at-home moms. I'm a military wife. Like $100 is the max of our budget to run a race, not 3,000. So I put that on my bucket list. And anyways, so you and I have a lot in common. Like that's kind of where a lot of our starts was with Jesse and, you know, everything that he's built.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool community. And years down the road, I did 29029 and been to some of those communities. And I think that's probably how I first tried Salty Britches. Maybe was it Running Man or 29029? I'm sure you could tell me which events you put product in. And I fell in love with it though.
29029, we did a lot of those before iFit bought the company and then expanded into Whistler and all over Canada. And then we kind of pulled out because they got so big and wanted a lot of free product, which, you know, as a small business was hard for us to do. And then they bought it back, which I was delighted to see that Mark Hodelick and that whole group had bought 29029 back, which was great. But that's probably where you discovered it. We have not done Running Man. We're not completely opposed to doing Running Man. But honestly, our business has just gone in so many directions that we have to be super judicious about sharing it to different audiences. And a lot of the Running Man audience is the same as the 29029 audience as well. So that's part of been, you know, just making those business decisions because we do give away a lot of product to sponsor these events. And it's been wonderful for us to grow that way and to be introduced to people such as yourself that way. But we've kind of taken, we only have so much budget. So we have to budget with different events where it makes sense for us. And instead of Running Man, we chose Leadville, but Leadville came to us, which was amazing. And that story by itself with Boundless Coaching was incredible, how they discovered us at the Keys 100 and they were suffering terribly in that humid, wet environment using a competitive product. And someone was running in front of them that heard them commiserating and turned around and gave them packets of Salty Britches. He's like, you cannot do the Keys 100 without Salty Britches. And those guys used it and then messaged me on our website. Was like, can we please set up a call with you? I had no idea who Boundless Coaching was. And so we had a call and they're like, you know, this stuff is amazing. Why does it work? What is it? What is this? You know, tell us about it. And then they said, we've got to get you to Leadville. You have got to be the anti-chafe for Leadville. And that happened last year. You know, you make these kinds of things pop up and you kind of have to make decisions. How do I best spread the word and get to places where I haven't been before? That's kind of the answer to that.
Amy, you got this product out of a need. It's growing. First off, how old is the 6-year-old boy that needed this product now, currently?
He's 19.
19. All right. So 13 years down the road, right?
Yes.
13 years down the road. And you're in the endurance space, we'll say ultra running and triathletes, or maybe in that same bubble, even though we're not in the same bubble.
Totally.
But we'll say the military, then you got your beach community. What other communities are you serving and where is most of the growth happening currently?
That's a great question. Really, those 3 buckets are the easiest way to look at it, even though those buckets have a lot of little buckets underneath them. But we've really grown and are growing quickly in the military space. So we were adopted by the Army Rangers. We're on the Ranger packing list by name, which is really unusual. This was our 3rd year doing Best Ranger competition, where they mandated the competitors have to have it on their person when they compete, which is crazy. That endorsement has just done a ton for us, as you can imagine. By the way, we just came back from Best Ranger competition, and the first ever female finisher and competitor to ever compete in a Best Ranger competed this year and finished, which is absolutely unheard of. They do not make any sort of changes to the course or requirement for male or female. This girl, Gabby White is her name. She earned every bit of that. She's a complete and total stud. So anyway, that has been huge for us. And then in the Marine Recon space, MARSOC space, a lot of special forces. So they're aware of our product. They use our product. We're trying to standardize it into some other spaces. We know that we can make a difference for blisters and chafing, especially those going through boot camp. So we're trying to work towards those requirements and the data that's required there. it's not very easy. It's a really heavy lift. It's a long game. So that's where we spend a lot of our time and effort is in that space while trying to maintain the ultra marathons and the visibility there and the travel associated and all the, free product associated with that and just handling the messages that come in on Instagram. And it's a lot. It's a lot to handle. Backcountry hunting is another one that's gotten a lot of traction for us. Those that are spending any kind of time in gear and in the elements that can really benefit from our products. And even winter exposure. So winter warfare school, winter training in Alaska. You held up our winter product, Mandy, which has really kind of gotten a grassroots following to prevent windburn and skin breakdown on the face and the hands, the nose, any sort of exposed skin. So that has some traction. And then the other one that we never saw coming was amputee care. And that has been so touching for us because ultimately all we really care about is this is going to help somebody. And the amputee space is not one we anticipated, but we've gotten some exposure there from some big names that have really benefited from the product. So we have added to our team, we added retired Green Beret Daniel Carrollton, who is an amputee who I always like to tell her he has 8 children. This is the calmest man I've ever met in my life. He and his wife are just a power couple, Juanita and Daniel. And as an amputee, he really struggled with skin breakdown. It was a real problem for him. And he's very active and wanted to remain very active. And with 8 kids, you can imagine. He just finished a 75-mile ruck in Texas for Texas Independence Day, hiking all the way to the Alamo, or rucking all the way to the Alamo. It was 75 miles. And he did it with his prosthesis, and he did it with Salty Britches. And that really convinced him this product's legit. This product is one that people need. It needs to move out of the nice to have category and into the need category. And so he's actually joined our team as our business development manager for the military space and the amputee care space. And he's fully convinced because of the test he put it through. So that's been really cool to kind of watch that unfold in that community.
Amy, thinking about the size of your team, I know sometimes we think that there's hundreds of people behind the scenes, and the reality is there's probably 6 of you. So what does the team look like today?
Well, it's bigger than people realize, but not all under one roof. We're kind of scattered around. Daniel, who I mentioned, he's in San Antonio. He's in Texas. We have another lady who works with our military contracting who's also in Texas. We have a team in North Carolina that is doing our shipping. They do our Amazon, all of our e-commerce. They hold our inventory there. They're doing our ads on social media. So they have a great team, and we've kind of infiltrated into that team, and they do that heavy lifting for us. There's 3 of us here in this building that work and do all sorts of things. It's hard to describe what all of us do because it's different. So really that kind of makes up the majority of our team. We manufacture in Dallas. So we have a co-packer in Dallas that does our manufacturing. They're very much a part of our team. We talk all the time. We're developing a new product, which we're excited about, but it's taking a lot longer than we anticipated. So they're trying to help do that and talk about iterations. We've been through 2 years of iterations with this product, and you would think it would not be this complicated, but it's turned out to be. So we have the team in Dallas. We have the team in North Carolina. We have the 2 in Texas, and then there's 3 of us here.
Jeez.
It's bigger than you think, although people don't see that part of it, all the behind the scenes pieces and puzzles. But you realize early on you cannot do everything, and you're not good at everything. But it definitely takes a long time to find those people. And you go through a lot of them, especially if you're working with a firm, you're working with a co-packer. This is our 3rd co-packer, which we've loved the others, but we've outgrown them, which is a nice problem, but yet still a problem. And so you have to play the long goal and work with a co-packer that can meet these demands and growth. And it's just been a wild ride. And we like to give God the glory because he has sent people to us that have really made a difference in our company. We also work with some military distributors. North American Rescue is one, and they're only an hour from us. And they've been phenomenal to work with us in the public safety side, which includes woodland firefighter and law enforcement officers and border patrol. And now we're working on some things with the military space with them. And they have a whole team. They have a marketing team. They have a development team. They have a team that handles all the required exporting and all the things. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. So the team is not just who's on your payroll, but who you partner with to make this a go. And that can be a really challenging part of having a product that's a consumable that you put on your skin. You've got to make sure, and we have 5 attorneys. So you've got to make sure that you get it all lined out with the right people that can help you do these things. And that takes time. People don't often think about when they're trying to grow a brand or grow a product. It takes a while to get that lined out. And, I think Jesse even says the statistics say to build a brand, it takes minimum of 8 years. And we're really in year 7. We'll turn 7 years old in June for launching the product. So I think that's about right. I mean, we've kind of followed that track. So it takes a long time, a lot of patience, blood, sweat, and tears. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So Amy, something you said there I wanted you to touch on a little bit, the family aspect, talking about the long game. Sometimes our families, when we get into these things, we have no idea what's coming next. Our families definitely have no idea what's coming next or how this changes daily life. And another interview you did, you talked about how TV, family night, movie night, literally was packing boxes. And I feel that to my core because we're prepping race bibs the night before a race, and that is our family time together. And so I just wanted to hear what's that family dynamic and support like these days, and how much is the family involved in the day-to-day of the business?
Yeah. And, there's a great story attached to that because they have sacrificed tremendously. And, when we first started this, I felt like I was going to lose my mind because I was working full time and traveling often, and then trying to get this little business off the ground and meet the demand, pouring in our kitchen. And it started when my son was young. It started with us, my husband and my son in the kitchen. My son would put the stickers on the jars. My husband would put all the lids. I'd pour all the jars and blend, and he'd get home before I would, and he'd get all the raw materials out. He knew exactly how I had to melt what with what. There was a whole formula there. So I'd get home and do all the things, and then he kind of handled the logistics of it. And I got to a point where I went to my husband, who's the greatest man on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. We've been married 22 years, and we just make a perfect team. And I said, I need help engineering this. I don't know how to do this. I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. How are we going to do this financially? And we did not have investors. We did not have friends and family money. We didn't have any of that. We just had us. And he said, we're going to figure this out. Let me think about this. So he came back to me and said, we're going to have to sell everything we own. We're going to have to sell this big house, and we're going to have to move to a really tiny cabin that had been in our family since 1984 in the middle of nowhere. We're going to have to move our kid out of Christian school, private school that we pay for, move him to public school in the 7th grade in a different town. That's how we're going to have to do this. And we did. We sold everything we owned. I had an in-home estate sale. I sold my suits, my shoes, my purses, furniture. We sold everything. Golf clubs. I mean, we lived on a golf course. We were comfortable. We became very uncomfortable. And we moved to a tiny house that did not have a washer and dryer hookup. We did not have closets. We moved him in the 7th grade to a school that he did not know where he didn't know anyone. And he graduated from that same school last year in 2024. We were able to buy the property next to the tiny home and build our shop, which is on our property, which is where I'm talking to you today. We just made it work. And literally, we put a laundry room in our shop. And this is still our situation today. So we have lived in this tiny home. And honestly, a lot of things about it have been great. It's brought our family closer together. We have learned that you really don't need a lot. It's almost cathartic to get rid of stuff and to live a much more simple life and, experiences over things. And it's changed our entire family dynamic for the positive, for the better, just our mindsets. And now that we have property, which we didn't have before, my husband ended up, when we built this shop, we had a huge red mud hill in front where the land had been cleared, and we built the shop, and we had 2 acres of just red mud. And he found a dilapidated hydroseeder, which is a machine that blends up. You see it on the side of the road where they spray the green grass to prevent erosion. Well, he found this machine for nothing and put it back together just to spray grass over our red mud hill at our shop. And people saw it, and the grass started growing, and they wanted to know who did that. Well, my husband did. Well, can he do my yard? So we started another business for my husband
Can
He
he come do
started out of this shop. He has half the shop. I have half the shop.
Oh, wow.
He still works full time as a new product development engineer. And in his off time, which is never now, he hydroseeds. So we have just developed into these businesses, which my son also works with, the hydroseeding. And he's in school, but he does a lot of that with my husband, who ended up with tractors and trailers and hydroseeders and all these things that he never, ever would have done had we stayed put and not gone
That's
for
pretty
it.
cool.
And so, yeah, that's kind of, you talk about the impact on the family. It has been a ton of sacrifice, time. I mean, I missed Father's Day for like 4 years in a row going to a race. And, you know, he was cool with it because he's bought in, fully supports, my husband fully supports this business in every way, shape, and form you can imagine. And I think that's what it takes. You know, the family has to be all in. Now, we have other members of our family that don't understand it at all and don't get why you're not available. And, well, you just work in the shop up the hill. I mean, aren't you flexible? Can't you do this? And I've never worked more in my life, you know, and 7 days a week, it is a thing. But my son has seen it. He has seen it unfold. He's very much a part of things. We've taken him to some of the races. He loves Chad Wright, goes to Chad's races. Yeah, so it's very much impacted the family. And if I did not have the support of my husband, who really kind of intercepts things for me, I don't know how we could have done this, but it was a major, major life shift at an older age. Not typically how people would write this to make it successful. You know, did you start a business at 42? I don't know, but that's what happened to me. So that's kind of the story. And it was, people don't get it. It's weird. People don't understand, why would you take that risk? Why would you move out of this house to that house? You know, why would you do this to your family? What ended up being the best thing to happen to our family. So yeah, it's just in how you frame it and what you think is important. And do you think things are important, or do you think your image is important, or do you think, you know, helping other people and doing whatever it takes to do that is what's important? And really that's the value system of our family. You know, if this helps somebody, then let's do whatever we got to do. Let's, you know, haul our dirty laundry up and down the hill to the shop, you know, if that's what it takes. And that's what it took. So we don't regret it.
Gosh, I'm exhausted listening to that story. I'm like just thinking about it, like it's exhausting. But it's such a great story, and it just goes to show how much energy the both of you have, the family has around this and this process, and to even think about a second business is incredible. So kudos to you guys.
I have nothing to do with the hydroseeding, and he really has nothing to do with Salty Britches, except for the physical labor part. You know, pallets and the boxes.
The boxes need to be moved.
Yeah. We've added on to this shop already, but moving things out of here so it ships out of North Carolina is a huge relief for us. But it just goes to show that you can really squeeze a lot more out of life than you realize. You know, and I think if anybody knows that, ultra runners know that. We all have so much more potential than we give ourselves credit for, and you have to learn it. You have to experience it. You have to push yourself outside of your perceived human potential. And you don't ever discover that unless you put yourself in a situation to push outside of your perceived boundaries. And that is the biggest lesson probably from ultra running, is that you're capable of so much more than your mind tells you are.
Yeah, Amy, on that note, there are so many similarities between being an entrepreneur, a small business owner, to being an ultra runner or just a runner in general. And something I'm constantly reminding me of that you are proof of is that there's really never the perfect time to start anything, whether it's to start your athletic career or running or a business, because if you wait for the conditions to be perfect, you might as well just sit on the couch and eat bonbons or just stay in your, job that you hate forever, because the conditions are never going to be perfect, right? To your point,
Correct.
You didn't have a perfect setup for this business, but you just have to go for it. And the same way that, runners that are listening, they've been in that spot before where there's never the perfect time to start training for an ultra. You just have to start with one step, and all of those steps will lead you somewhere. They might lead you to failure, but you're going to learn something and grow. And who knows where you're going to land? You might land with 2 businesses and a shop and a life you never dreamed of,
Exactly.
Or, like
And a
Brian,
laundry
a
room,
million
and a
belt
laundry room
buckles.
up the hill. Yeah. And a laundry room up the
Yeah.
hill.
That is your workout, because it sounds like maybe you got to climb a hill to do your laundry. So
Well, we actually have team
cross-training.
PT with our team, and we are all a part of Orange Theory, which we've grown to love. So we take the team and go to Orange Theory twice a week and do
Nice.
that as a team. And then we all come to the shop and just get to work. And that's really done a lot to just solidify our team and compete against each other and push each other and just get out there and get sweaty with each other. That's been a lot of fun. But you're exactly right. If you cannot wait on the perfect conditions, because that is a lie. It doesn't exist. It's a decision. Just make the decision, and you won't be perfect. And failure, really, it's how you frame that too. Is it a failure if you do DNF? Maybe not. Maybe you learned a ton about nutrition, and you learned a ton about hydration, and you learned a ton about a ton. I did 29029. I did Vermont, and I did 11 of the 17 hikes, and I had to bail because my Achilles just was miserable, and I was scared to death I was going to snap my Achilles. And I have a business to run and a lot of travel, and that is a major thing to fix. So I had to make the call. I cannot push it until this thing goes. I'm just going to have to make the call. And I was devastated. I was so upset about it. And then as I kind of reflected on it, I'm like, yeah, but what I did do, I got up in the middle of the night and hiked that wet and rainy mountain when hardly anybody else was on it. And the only other people on the mountain that night was Nate and Kate, the YouTubers. And I met them that night in one of the aid stations, because we were the only three that were crazy enough to be out there in the thunder and lightning. And the gondolas would stop, then they'd go again, and we just kept going. And I'm like, I pushed myself through that. I learned a lot about myself, but I had to DNF because of my Achilles, and I'm okay with that, on to the next adventure. But I learned a ton about it. And I also learned that I only do have so much energy, and running a small business and traveling all the time. Training for an ultra is just not in my season right now. I can do smaller races, which I really enjoy. Love to run, so I can still do that. But I'm probably not going to train for a 100-miler right now because I'm in the midst of everything else in the world. It feels like an ultra every day of my life.
Yeah, you're in the ultra running of business. I get that. I totally get that. There have to be times in your life where you can't do it all, but you're doing amazing things, Amy.
Well, the community in ultra running is the greatest. And all I can tell someone that is really considering, oh, I'm scared to death, I know I'm not trained, I don't know how to do it, get a coach, call one of you guys, and just do it, because you have nothing to lose. You will never regret the relationships that you build in that community. You will never regret improving your health, your spirit. All of that will only improve. That is all that can happen to you, is that it will get better. So just do the thing. Just sign up and meet the group and go out and just meet the people, and you will never, ever regret it.
Amy, you gave a little sneak peek into a new product. Is there a chance you could talk about that?
Not yet. I'm close. I'm very close. Yeah, still a little early. But, we do everything USA made. That's been harder than I anticipated it to be. And now with the push of tariffs and all this other crazy stuff, a lot of companies are shifting, and they're a lot bigger than we are. And they're shifting into the space where we already are. But because they're so much bigger, they take precedence. So you get pushed down the aisle because you have the, Estee Lauders of the world or whatever that want to come in and take the space. That's been our challenge. So we're working through that. We have some really good partners to help us work through that, but it's taking a lot longer than we anticipated. It's been an interesting discovery, just how all of this how it impacts everything as a consumer that we do and we use. And it's been awesome to be USA made. It's harder by far, but because we chose that route early on as part of our values, we ended up getting into the military really quickly. So it's delayed us though tremendously. And I'm just a firm believer in God's time and not my time. And it's frustrating because nothing happens as quickly as you want it to. Nothing. And that includes training for an ultra. You just have to have some space and patience and work through it. It's very hard to manhandle your way through it. no matter how dogged you are, that's just part of the challenge of it. But we're getting there. So just stay tuned. Hopefully it's this summer. That's the plan. So we'll see.
Where will Salty Britches be in 1, 3, 5 years? Like where do you kind of see this going towards?
Well, I mean, we're definitely playing the long game. We'd like to be standardized in the military. We know we can really save the military a lot of money in lost time and blisters and downtime for chafing and infection. So, that's a long game, and that's the one we're working towards. There's a lot of great products in the ultra marathon space. There's a lot of great anti-chafe products in the marathon space, and we have a lot of respect for all of them. We'd like to grow in that space and stay in that space for sure. I wish I had a crystal ball and could tell you that our whiteboard is mapped out exactly that way, but it's not. And we have to be open to some new opportunities that kind of show up for us. That's kind of the answer to that. It's developing more product lines. Do we want to do that? Yeah. But is that really what we should do? Maybe not. Mm-hmm. It's just this business, this brand has kind of told us where to go. If we've been open to that, it'll tell us where to go in the future too, mm-hmm. because we started with just what we thought was the coastal surf shop brand. That's all we thought it was. And then this brand told us, hey, you need to go over here. And then you need to go over here and you need to work over here too. And that's been the story of it. So if we're open to that, like the amputee care, and if we can be on formulary for amputees at Walter Reed and CFI and all these different hospital systems, then that's the route we should go. If we need to be on formulary for the VA, so there's so much that is happening, but yet we don't even know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. So yeah, as a business, do you want to have, a SWOT analysis and your 1, 5, and 10-year goals? Sure. But is that realistic? No, it's just not. So that's kind of where we are.
Amy, what have you learned about yourself in the last 7-8 years? What's been the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself, or that's maybe surprised? How have you surprised yourself? Learned about yourself or surprised?
How to rely on faith. It makes me emotional. That which you don't see. And I have seen the good Lord bend time and space over and over and over to where it's just undeniable. Faith was always important to me, but we made it our cornerstone for the business. I need to get it together.
Oh, you're good. I'm a crier. I love criers. I didn't mean to make you cry, but
I'm not really a crier.
I'm sending you my heart.
This subject always makes me cry because it's been incredible when you can really make that what you fall back on, and you don't realize until you get in a position where you have nothing else to fall back on. And then you can see how the Lord aligns the dots and aligns the people. It's just crazy. But if you're never in a position where that's all you have, you might not see it. But when you're in a position that's all you have and you look for that, you will see it. And that has probably been the most incredible part of it. And it's surprising in that it's really grown my faith tremendously. But as far as me and learning about myself, is that I am capable of a lot more than I originally thought, for sure. And obviously, the other big one for me has been your circle. The people you're around. When you're around high performers and you're in these communities, I'm in the Ranger community, in the Special Forces community, in the ultra running community, and you're just exposed to that. It just makes you better. And it matters. It absolutely matters who you're around, who you're listening to, what you're feeding your brain, what you're feeding your body, what you're feeding your soul. All of that matters. And we can all get better at that. So, and I was always kind of around high performers in my career, but this is different, and it really does matter. And of course, I think as you get older, you kind of recognize it more too and how important it is. And then having to learn to cut out noise, filter a lot of things, make quick decisions of what's important, what's not important, how to prioritize. I've gotten a lot better at those things because you cannot absorb everything. You cannot allow your time, you can't give your time away constantly. And that was a hard lesson for me too, because I wanted to just give and give and give, and I couldn't get anywhere because my time was getting sucked away, and you have to really filter those things. So just getting better at that and learning how best to prioritize your time. Even the best of us, we can even write it out that, our relationship with Christ is going to get time. Our relationship with our family is going to get time. It's never in balance. And, you have to cheat from something, it feels like, all the time. And being able to figure that out, and that plays into having a great partner and relationship with your spouse who supports that and recognizes that. Okay, for these 2 weeks, there's going to be nothing left. We're not going to have home cooked meals. We're not going to do those things because you're over here doing this. And having that support has just made our marriage even better, and our relationship and our friendship even better. So, that is a very long answer to your question.
I love it. I love
very
it.
emotional answer to your question, and one I don't often reflect on very much. But, really, when it comes down to it, it's just being in a space where I can physically see the good Lord move. And I can't say enough about that.
I love it. Yeah, thank you for sharing that piece. I think I love human authenticity, whether it's in ultra running or in business. I think it's important for us to show that at the end of the day, we're all human and have feelings, and there's a lot going on inside of us when it comes to these big goals and crushing things in life.
Yeah, for sure.
Amy, you got a winter skin relief ointment. You got the chafing ointment. I would say they're pretty self-explanatory, that people are using them for external use and chafing areas, soft skin areas, for on the beach, or whether not on the beach, for the military, all those things. But I know you've gotten probably that email about some sort of use that isn't in that same line. Someone's using it some other way that's just a little bit out of the confines. And could you tell us about one of those stories, maybe?
Yeah, I have some funny ones.
I bet.
For example, the Coast Guard, we had some members of the Coast Guard up north that were in these full orange suits that have the Ziploc pockets everywhere. And one of the guys had Salty Britches in his in his, what do you call it, where you pull the pocket apart? A Velcro pocket. And they had some bolts on the front of the boat that they could not unscrew. And he put Salty Britches on it, and it I'll never forget getting that email. That was hilarious. We hear crazy stuff like that all the time. And of course, there's a lot of off-label uses that I can't promote, but we get asked often about diaper rash or, eczema, psoriasis. And you need drug labels to make those claims. We don't have those drug labels. We have a lot of anecdotal stories of people that use it for that. And that's kind of how we have to frame that answer, because we don't have that drug label. Those take clinical trials to be able to make the claims. There's a ton of products out there that make those claims that have never gone through the clinical trial process. And I just warn people about that, especially a lot of hand-poured homemade goods. They haven't done the clinical trials. And, the FDA is trying to crack down on that. And they put a thing in place called MOCRA, which is, it's a requirement for all cosmetics to go through. So they're careful about their claims, and we're MOCRA certified. Our FDA approved facility is MOCRA certified, and all those things matter. So you hear a lot about hand poured handmade goods, but you have to be careful about what's actually in it, and what it can do. But yeah, we hear a lot of these funny stories, and the best way we can describe it is if you have vulnerable skin from head to toe and you want to preserve that skin, that's what we do. And our product is not a lubricant either, really. There's some lubricating properties to it, but it's not what you're used to. If you're looking for your thighs to glide and slide, that is not what we do. But in the words of OB, which is he's a captain, who's not a physical therapist, he's a PA, physician assistant at Ranger School. It's for your cheeks, meats, and feet. But if you want to preserve skin, our skin barrier really helps do that. It's waterproof, sweat-proof. You really can't even wash it off. It just has to wear off over time. And people are not used to that. But if they're, someone that's just walking around in a dress and they really don't want their thighs to chafe, our product is probably not their product. If our customer is the one that is really sweating, getting after it, wearing gear, going very long distances, those really are our customers. So we're trying to tell that story and differentiate in that way, but it's not a glide. It's really not a lubrication. It's just a skin barrier that prevents skin breakdown. And that's kind of a different class. And it's kind of the only one in that class. So it is different, which makes it a little more challenging to explain to people. We've gotten a few negative reviews. We, of course, read every single review from people that didn't expect it to be that way or to work that way. And usually those are probably the people that are not sweating. They're not going after it. They're not really experiencing what the product can do. So that's kind of one of our biggest challenges too, is just trying to explain it. And really, I mean, as you know, Mandy, it is kind of hard to explain. You kind of just have to experience how it works and how it behaves to see the benefits, so till you understand, how to use it. But coating your feet and all over your toes, you're not going to slide around in your shoe. It doesn't make for a slick foot. You don't get a lot of sand that sticks to it. It's just provides an extra protective layer. We also can claim hypoallergenic, dermatologist tested. We're not going to contribute to heat injury or inability to sweat. It's just wild how it behaves and how it bonds to the skin, and how it lasts as long as it lasts, despite water crossings, sweat, salt water. It really does last on the skin, which is why we have the endorsement of people like we do, like Truett Haynes and Iron Cowboy James Lawrence and Jesse and Chad Wright. We have so many of these endorsements that are just incredible. And we don't pay those people, but they have discovered the product and can really get the benefit from it. They understand it. So that's who we kind of lean on to help tell the story.
Yeah, I used it religiously on my feet. My poor friend Diesel, Diesel, he spent a lot of time rubbing this on my feet at Cruel Jewel. And I ran Cruel Jewel last year and it poured rain almost the whole time. It was like the swampiest of swamps and my feet were destroyed, but less destroyed, I know, because we kept lathering these on and it just made the world a difference. Yeah. They would have been way worse. I mean, I really do give credit to that. So I think the foot application is probably my favorite use of it, or just the biggest impact, I think, especially when you're talking to ultra runners who are getting after it and wet, muddy, snowy, rainy conditions, or just a lot of sweat.
Yeah, we hear about the feet often. And two, for ultra runners, is the rub from the hydration vest, the lower backs, the insides of your biceps, the center, if you wear a workout bra or a monitor, a chest monitor. Those are places that are real popular spots. And then, of course, the grundle area, the rear end, those places where the sun doesn't shine can be really vulnerable skin. It can really protect that. And for men, of course, we hear about that often, which even if we don't want to, everybody wants to tell us. Who knew that would be what my dreams are made of, is conversations about your grundle, but here we are.
You just got to get a pair of earmuffs, Amy.
Earmuffs. I know. I'm so immune to it now. I just heard it all, so it doesn't even matter at this point.
Yeah, I bet nothing surprises you anymore. Yeah, what a great story. Thank you so much for sharing the journey of Salty Britches with us this afternoon. We really appreciate your time, and we want to be respectful of that time as well. So thank you for stopping in, and we'll let you get back to it.
I appreciate you guys having me. It was a blast. Sorry, my eyes leaked on you there a little bit, but we truly are very passionate about this brand. We wake up in the morning, never feel like this is work. This is our life's work, and we're honored to do it and be a part of these incredible communities like yours. And we appreciate the support so much.
It was great to see you again, Amy, and can't wait to see you out at a race soon. I'm sure we're going to cross paths sometime this year.
I believe it.